these two verbs, to play and to sing. The English verb has several forms, but first is the infinitive form, and this is the form before it conjugates into other forms. So to play and to sing are infinitive forms, and we add to the verbs to indicate that these are verbs. We can conjugate these verbs into the present form, the past form, the past participle, and the present participle, which is also often called the verb ing. So the present form of play is play or plays, and we use plays for third person singular subjects, which are he, she, and it. The past form of play is played. The past participle is played also. The present participle, or the verb ing, is playing. For sing, the present form is sing or sings. The past form is sang. The past participle is sung. And the present participle is singing. When a verb's past and the past participle form ends in ed, like play, they are called regular verbs. And there are many other verbs like this, such as clean, wash, and type. And when a verb's past form and the past participle form don't end in ed, like sing, they are called irregular verbs. And other examples include drive, write, and fly. For many irregular verbs, there is no consistent pattern in the way they change. So the most important thing is to learn and memorize how irregular verbs change into different forms. Learning the conjugation pattern is really important, as when you learn different tenses and different sentence structures, you will need to be able to conjugate, as in change verbs into different forms. Common examples are the present perfect tense and the passive sentence structure, where you need to change verbs into past participle forms. We have an extensive list of common English verbs and their conjugated forms in the resources section, so please do refer to that for more information. Okay, let's now look at how verbs are used in an English sentence. All English sentences have to have a verb. Verbs are the most important words in English sentences. Consider these sentences. I sleep. He studies. Finish your homework. So as you can see, all three sentences have verbs, and the last sentence is called an imperative form, which we use to give orders and instructions. This type of sentence doesn't have a subject, but must have a verb at the beginning of the sentence. Also, some sentences can have more than one verb. For example, he doesn't like studying. I may study. We are studying. In these verb structures, the verb which the subject does is called a main verb. Main verb is central to the meaning of the verb phrase. So main verbs in these sentences are like, study, and watching. The remaining parts in the verb phrase are what we call auxiliary verbs, and they help to give extra meaning to the verb phrase. So in these examples, they give the meaning of negation, the meaning of probability, and the meaning of progress. Verbs like may are often called modal verbs, and there are many other verbs that belong to this category. Modal verbs can never be the main verb in a sentence. The be verb and the do verb, on the other hand, can be the main verb in a sentence, but they can also be auxiliary verbs. The verb have is another verb that can be an auxiliary verb and a main verb. As we learn various verb tenses and sentence structures in this course, we will see how we conjugate verbs into different forms, and we will also see more of these auxiliary verbs used in verb phrases. Okay, so in this lesson we looked at how verbs conjugate into different forms, and the use of verbs in sentences and the different verbs in verb phrases. In the next, look at a few example sentences. He lives in London. They work from home. She misses her family. As mentioned in the previous lesson, for plural nouns and also for pronouns I and you, we use the plural verbs. So in the second sentence, we use the plural verb work with the plural pronoun they. However, in the first and the third sentence, the subject is third person singular, so we use the singular verbs lives and misses. Although we mentioned that we can make singular verbs by adding an s to the end of verbs, in this second verb we've added es because the infinitive form is miss. So while most verbs change into singular forms by adding an s, some verbs change differently. For verbs that end in o, ch, sh, ss, x and z, we add es at the end of the verbs to make them into singular verbs. So go is goes, match is matches, rush is rushes, miss is misses, mix is mixes, and buzz is buzzes. To give you more examples, do is does, fetch is fetches, mash is mashes, kiss is kisses, fix is fixes, and fizz is fizzes. Also, when the verb ends in a consonant plus y structure, like fly, then we remove the y and add ies. So fly is flies, study is studies, carry is carries, and hurry is hurries. For all other verbs, we simply add s at the end, though verbs like have and the be verb are irregular verbs as they change differently for third person singular subjects. Okay, so in this lesson we learned how to change verbs into singular verbs in the present tense. In the next lesson we'll look at about general truth and facts. Now there are two kinds of general truth and facts. And the first one is about general truth or facts which are considered true at the time of speaking. Consider these two sentences. Jack lives in London. Sam works at Google. Both of these sentences talk about a permanent truth at the time of speaking. Jack's permanent place of residence is London, and Sam's place of permanent work is at Google. Now, it's important to note that we don't use the present simple to talk about actions happening at the time of speaking, but we use the present simple tense to talk about general truth around the time of speaking. Let's look at two more example sentences. Our company sells children's toys. I want a new job. So again, these statements are permanent truth around the time of speaking, and we often use the present simple tense to talk about our desires and also likes and dislikes. So we can say, I like movies, she hates books. As you can see, the verbs used in these statements are in the present tense. Okay, the second kind of general truth and facts are those that are always true. So we can say things like, Jane comes from Australia, the earth revolves around the sun, the human body has 206 bones. The first sentence refers to the permanent truth about Jane's nationality. That's probably always going to be true. And the second and the third sentences are related to permanent truth about the world we live in. So all three statements are about things that are always true. Okay, so in this lesson we learned the first use of the present simple tense, which is to talk about general truth and facts. And first look at a couple of sentences, and then we'll look at the second main use of the present simple tense. I drink coffee in the morning. She plays tennis on Sundays. Now, you may be able to tell, but the second key use of the present simple tense is to talk about habitual and regular events. Both these sentences talk about habitual and regular events. The first sentence talks about me drinking coffee in the morning, and this sentence means that I drink coffee in the morning every day. And the second sentence uses the phrase on Sundays to show that I play tennis every Sunday. When talking about habitual or regular events, we often use time expressions like in the morning. And like morning, we can also use afternoon and evening in a similar way. So we can say in the afternoon, in the evening. However, when we use the word night, we say at night. So we use a different preposition, and we don't use the article the with night. Let's look at a few example sentences that use these time expressions. I take a nap in the afternoon. We go for a walk in the evening. She reads a book at night. So when we use these time expressions with the present simple tense, it means that we do these actions regularly at these times of the day. Another time expression we saw was on Sundays. When we add an S at the end of words for days of the week, it means weekly on that day. So on Sundays is the same as every Sunday. There is no difference in meaning. Let's look at a few other example sentences that use this pattern. They go hiking on Saturdays. She goes to the library on weekends. I go to the gym on Wednesday evenings. So as you can see in these examples, we can add an S at the end of weekend to mean every weekend. And we can also do the same for Wednesday evenings to mean every Wednesday evening. Okay, so in this lesson, we learned to use the present simple tense to talk about habitual and regular events. So far, we've learned that the present simple tense is used to talk about general facts and truth, and habitual and regular events. And the third use is to talk about future events, but more specifically, arranged or scheduled future events. Let's first look at two example sentences. The graduation is next Saturday. The flight leaves at 8 p.m. tomorrow night. Now, both of these sentences use time expressions that refer to the future. And these are next Saturday and at 8 p.m. tomorrow night. But the verbs are in the present tense. And we can use the present simple tense to talk about future when we're talking about scheduled arrangements in the future. And in these sentences, the date of the graduation and the time of the flight are fixed arrangements in the future. When we use the present simple tense to talk about fixed arrangements in the future, we generally use a time expression that states when that arrangement is. Let's look at a few other example sentences. The movie starts at 6 p.m. tonight. My parents arrive this weekend. The school holiday starts on the 22nd of July. So each sentence describes a fixed arrangement in the future, and each sentence has a time expression to state when that arrangement is in the future. Okay, so in this lesson, we learned to use the present simple tense to talk about scheduled arrangements in the future. Next,
Subscribe dong English tutorial.